Welcome, friends. Welcome back to the kitchen. Welcome back to another episode of New Old Cookbook Unboxing. Still don't know what I'm calling this segment, but I will figure it out. This is a packed box, so let's get it open. Uh-oh. Upside down. Okay, what have we got? This one, 1950s, 60s, or 70s, a plastic binder. Ooh, so, kind of interesting book. This is a true community cookbook. Bass River Yacht Club Galley Secrets. Immediately, the date doesn't jump out. And often with these books, they don't. The committee is having a hard enough time putting together a cookbook, and they forget to put the date on it. But they're all, each recipe is labeled by the contributor. Presumably, they are all members of the Bass River Yacht Club. Is it a real yacht club? I know some people that belong to a yacht club, and they don't own boats. Okay, next book. And I think this is where the books really start. So there's a letter here. Let's get this off. Glenn, it's time to pass these on to someone else who will appreciate them. I love these two books. I found them many years ago in a junk antique store in Reidsville, North Carolina. Okay, so these two books were held together with an elastic. The first one, there's no title on the cover, and the spine is missing. Here's the spine. A Jug of Wine. It's called A Jug of Wine. And this, with a Jug of Wine. An unusual collection of recipes with a jug of wine by Morrison Wood. 1949. Oh, and there's a list of... So the beginning section, they talk about wine. What types of wines are dry, which are sweet, full-bodied, lighter-bodied, where these wines are made in the world. And there seems to be a specific focus on California, New York, Northern Ohio. You know, pre-Prohibition, there was a thriving wine industry in the United States. A thriving wine industry in the United States that used indigenous grapes found in North America. That, by all accounts, were producing incredible wines. Then there was Prohibition. And Prohibition sort of stopped that winemaking. Well, no, it did stop that winemaking. And when Prohibition ended, the cost of shipping wines from Europe had dropped to the point where it wasn't worth anybody's while, really, to start up a winery, except in regions like California where the grapes grew really well, where European grapes grew really well. And Americans lost a taste of indigenous wines, wines made with indigenous grapes in North America. And if it hadn't been for early American vintners, this is totally off topic. If it hadn't been for early American vintners who ran these wineries in the 1800s, the European wine business would have completely collapsed with phylloxera. It was American grape growers who realized that the phylloxera that was wiping out all of the vines in Europe didn't affect their vines in North America. And they came up with the process of grafting European vines onto American rootstock so that those old vines, those old European wine variants could still be grown and made into wine. A huge contribution to global wine was this American. There's one in particular whose name escapes me right now. During the edit, I'll try to remember and put up a picture of him and a little bit of information. Anyway, so on with the book. Okay, so just by flipping through it, I can see that this is not a cookbook for the average household. This really is for people who want to explore the world and have a bit of money, to buy some of these ingredients and either have the time themselves to make it happen, or, in 1949, still have a housekeeper. Probably not very common by 1949 to still have a housekeeper. Oh, there's some really good recipes in here. Okay, so we'll probably come back to this lobster au rhum, lobster thermidor. Okay, so this is a book that we will be cooking from. Some interesting highfalutin recipes in this book. This book, in a way, is a harbinger of things to come in cookbooks going forward. And you start to see it really heavily much later in like the 1980s, where there are a lot of coffee table cookbooks filled with incredible pictures and recipes that the average person has no hope of making, mostly because they're too complicated, but also because you can't get the ingredients. They use ingredients that aren't available to the average person, either because you'd have to order them in special and they're too expensive, or you just can't get them where you live. Next one is called The Textbook of Cooking. Let's see. Ooh. Gladys Roberts had this. OMHS, I imagine that's her high school. A Textbook of Cooking by Carlotta C. Greer. Department of Foods and Household Management. 1915. So this is an actual high school textbook for cooking. And it goes farther into cooking than just cooking. It's about, dining room service, the costs of food, food value in terms of nutrition, your daily requirements. It's divided into different sections about different types of cooking, all kinds of information about what you need to set up your kitchen. There's lessons and questions. And I don't mean this in a bad way, but very basic cooking, the types of things that you would learn in high school of how to cook. And it's interesting looking at this book, 1915. I mean, by the time I went to high school in the 1980s, the early 1980s, boys were discouraged from taking home economics and cooking. We were all sort of streamed into auto shop, drafting, wood shop, electrical shop, those sorts of things. We were discouraged from doing things like typing. I wasn't allowed to take a typing class. And here we are in 2024, and having taken a typing class in high school would have helped me unbelievably, given that everything now is done on a keyboard in a computer. So this is a very interesting book. So I have a number of textbooks from high schools. Whoever owned this has underlined a lot of stuff. I have a number of these textbooks from high schools around North America. And we should probably do a show where we pull out the different textbooks and take a look at what people were learning at the turn of the last century, early 1900s and into the 1930s. Important information about making candy. Interesting. Okay, next one. From Cape Cod Kitchens. Wire bound, but a very heavy wire binding. So let's see what the date is. 1934. 1934. And it looks like it's a community cookbook. Look at that. It's written in code. It's written in code. Unbelievable. I mean, not really code, but stick a 10-year-old in front of this book and they won't be able to read it. That's wild. I wonder if it's actually written in the handwriting of the person who submitted the recipe to the cookbook, because it's all written in different handwriting. Some of it's very tight. Very, very tight. Wow. I learned this in but there's some of this that I can't read. I mean, I can't read my own handwriting, so that tells you something about my script. And not just cookbooks, not just cooking. There's other information always in these cookbooks from this time period about how to take care of your furniture, how to make hand lotion, how to mop the floor, things that you should do at the various holidays, Easter, Memorial Day, 4th of July, Bunker Hill Day. Don't know what Bunker Hill Day is, but I have to imagine that has something to do with New England. How to make liniment, what to eat on Saturday night. Okay. Here's one. This is, what year is this? 1934. 1934, Cape Cod Kitchens. I have to imagine that this recipe for skin food cream by 1934 is almost impossible to make. Can't make it today. Realistically, you can't make it today. But this is a recipe that I see over and over and over in books from the 1800s. Uses white wax and spermaceti. And spermaceti is, I don't quote me on this, look it up, I might get it wrong, but it is found in the cavity of the head of a sperm whale. It is a substance inside their head. It's the reason they're called the sperm whale, is because of this stuff in the spermaceti that's in their head. It's kind of like a wax, I imagine. I've never seen it, because at this point you're not allowed to hunt whales, so there's no real source in 2024 of spermaceti. Okay. We're going to try to do some recipes out of this book. I'm going to try to decipher some of the handwriting, and we'll do something out of that book for sure. Cape Cod Kitchen Secrets, Yarmouth Branch, Cape Cod Hospital Aid Society. This one again has a wire binding, but it's 1949. One thing you'll notice from this show is that I don't cook a lot of fish or seafood. Shrimp. Pretty much as far as I get in. I've done a couple of mussel dishes, and it's one of those things that I always say to myself, I should cook more. And maybe I'll come back and make a couple of these, because there's some interesting seafood here. And I have to imagine, if it's from Cape Cod, it must be a good recipe. So we're going to try those. These ones are definitely from the 70s or later, maybe even the 80s. 1969, so it is from the 70s. So outside of my general, no date on this one, but again, it's the plastic binding. Thank you so much for sending these to me. I am incredibly interested in these books. There's some real gems here, and they show different slices of cookbooks. I mean, these and the ones that I've put in here are very regional. So American Northeast, New England. And they'll have vastly different recipes than what you find in cookbooks from the Midwest or the Southern United States, even though there will be some that are completely universal across all of those cookbooks. So thanks again for sending these in. As we're doing with this part of the show, Sunday morning, I will be cooking a recipe from one of these cookbooks, and then you are sure to see these cookbooks show up again and again in the future, because I think there's some very interesting recipes in here. Thanks for stopping by. See you again soon.